The state tackles the child support dilemma facing fathers in prison or recently released. A free portable crib is available to eligible families who learned the safe way to help their baby sleep. NSU's new Women's Economic Development Center is making a splash in the local community. Plus some advice on getting ready for the 2015 tax filing season, courtesy of AARP. The Forum is next. Non-payment of child support is a critical factor in the growing rate of childhood poverty. If the father is incarcerated or faces a hefty bill upon release, a never-ending cycle may begin. But the State Division of Child Support Enforcement is working with other agencies and organizations in an effort to help break that cycle. Christopher Hale is the Assistant Director, Eastern Region for Child Support Enforcement, and he joins us with details, as does Lee Williams, who has just been named coordinator of the Family Engagement Programs, and this is an area that we will be focusing on regarding child support payments. So thanks for joining us at this time. A lot of this is ongoing, some of it's emerging. But Chris, as Assistant Director for the Eastern Region, I guess maybe you could address best some of the reasons that are most common for non-support or non-payment of child support.
You know, there are a number of reasons. Clearly, when the economy we had difficulties with the economy. There was problems with employment. Unemployment was high. Right. There are individuals who choose to prioritize their debts, perhaps in what we would say is incorrectly. They don't put their children first. But that's one of the things that we're trying to do is we're trying to enforce those cases where an individual decides not to pay. They have the ability to pay, but they choose not to. But there's another portion of that population, people who want to pay, who would like to pay, but they have barriers to their employment, to employment, or barriers that prevent them from paying. In Virginia, we collect about $660 million in child support last year. But still, there was probably about $400 million that was unpaid.
Wow.
And so there still is a significant amount of work we can do and a significant amount of effort that we need to make to improve those collection numbers.
Okay. And Lee, you have been working with with probation and parole, working with the prisoners, people that are getting ready to be released and may have a desire to work through some of the barriers that they may face before they get out, and also have a desire to have a good relationship with their family, work on things such as a child support payment, but really don't know where to start.
What we recognize is that child support can be a significant barrier to a successful reentry, and we have developed those family engagement programs that will support a successful reentry. We have case managers in our district offices. Primary function is to work with those returning citizens and to identify whatever those barriers are and to address those barriers. Unemployment, of course, reentry into the workforce after a period of incarceration is the most significant barrier, and so we work with community partners to identify what we refer to as felony-friendly employers, those that will hire. We also look to connect those returning citizens with workforce where they can improve their skills. So significant amount of effort directed toward workforce reentry and also reconnecting that person with his family.
Okay. These barriers are pretty much apparent for most people coming out of prison, but the programs itself that you were talking about aren't certainly, at least in Norfolk, are not court mandated. These are programs that would be voluntarily.
We have one program that is working with the courts, and that is our intensive case monitoring program. Okay. What we want to do with that program is, I refer to it basically as a diversionary program. That person is in front of the courts, but instead of having to do jail time, be sentenced to jail time, that person is allowed the opportunity to work with our case manager and again address whatever barriers that he or she may have. And we also have Parents Striving for Success, PASS, which is an administrative program, and there we try to intervene prior to a large accrual of arrears and before we are at that point where we have to incarcerate. And finally, we have the Family Strong Reentry Program for those people that are returning after periods of incarceration, or those people that have been released but may still be impacted by the incarceration.
Okay, so the chance of them maybe even going back would be a possibility because they cannot pay.
One of the desired goals is to reduce recidivism. So what we want to do again is to provide those resources that are necessary so that if we can get the person employed and start to paying their child support, hopefully the desire is that it'll minimize or reduce the chances of that person returning to prison or to jail.
The family engagement programs are they just getting underway, or are they just starting to get bigger and more inclusive?
They have been in effect in Tidewater for, I would say, approximately 3 years.
Right.
In Tidewater for approximately 3 years. And we are now expanding them throughout the division. So when I say that we have a case manager in each of our offices, there is a case manager in all 21 of our offices with that objective.
Okay, great. So the idea that and they are also interested in anybody at partnerships, and when they say talk partnerships, maybe bringing others to really help move this forward.
One of the, again, major objectives is to identify employers that will work with us to hire our returning citizens. The other, of course, is to identify whatever barrier there is. Housing could be a barrier. So we work with that. Education is also a barrier, and we work with community partners. We identify those community partners that will help us address those issues as well.
Okay. So if you are a community organization or partner and have interest in learning more, we put the number up on the screen that you can call for partnership opportunities and also information about the program. Thank you, Christopher. You addressed this from sort of a broader view, but certainly these kinds of programs address an important segment of the population that maybe can actually be worked with and to find a solution.
That's correct. And what we found is that one of the big programs that we are working with is a fatherhood program. We find that many of these individuals don't know how to be fathers. They've never had a good example. With our out of wedlock birth rate, there may not be a father in their lives, but going through our fatherhood programs, they get connected with their families. They understand what it takes to be a father and how important that is. And then they'll increase their child support payments. And what we found statistically is that if the father is engaged in the child's life and makes regular payments, that the outcomes are much better overall.
Great. And this topic is going to relate to some of the topics we're about to embark on after the break. So we'd like you to stay with us, and I thank you very much for sharing the information about these programs. We'd love to hear more about it later on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And when we come back, we'll take a look at safe sleeping practices for babies. During the past 2 years, 43 infants in our local communities have died while sleeping in an unsafe environment. CHIP, the Children's Health Investment Program, is offering a way to help parents practice safe sleeping techniques with their baby. Trish O'Brien is president and CEO of CHIP of Southampton Roads, and Sarah Sturtzing is director of programs. They have more information on this program to provide a little incentive to people who may really benefit from knowing safe sleeping practices for their infants. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about CHIP first. What does the CHIP do for
Sure.
the region?
CHIP is the Children's Health Investment Program, and we're part of a statewide network, and we serve low-income families with pregnant women and children under the age of 6. And it really is a holistic approach to making sure every kid gets a healthy start and they're ready for school, and the parents are succeeding too. We really serve 2 generations at a time. Sleep Tight came into being in Chesapeake when we just served Chesapeake about 5 years ago now, and it was a response to our home visitors going into homes and finding babies sleeping in laundry baskets and in dresser drawers and in bed with their parents. And there was no resource to help these parents learn safe sleeping and provide them with a crib. So that's how Sleep Tight started in our area.
Okay, so the Sleep Tight program is to help educate parents on those techniques, and there is a little incentive in there for some people who might be interested in learning more and getting educated if they qualify. So, and that is a free portable crib, which we do not have here on the set, but that's okay. Just envision what this is. It's something clearly that you can carry with you where you're going, and it's designed to provide that little environment no matter where they might be.
Right, and the child, and the crib is a pack and play is what we get, and so it can actually grow until that child is, you know, larger and will be eventually moving into the bed. But it's a program that our agency has that's actually a wash line in our budget. So all the money that we raise goes directly into purchasing cribs, and we supply cribs for not just CHIP, but to other organizations from Williamsburg all the way to Virginia Beach and the Eastern Shore and beyond. And it's usually for organizations who can't fundraise, because CHIP is a nonprofit. We developed the program, and so we decided we were going to, you know, share the love with all these other organizations. But to participate, people, you know, we get referrals, and then if we have cribs, hopefully we have cribs, then they have to either come in or we'll go into their home, and we will provide them with a safe sleep training that lasts, I don't know, about a half an hour, 45 minutes, and then we show them how to actually set up the pack and play themselves, break it down, and then they do it themselves for us. And it's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. We see light bulbs going off for many of them. Many families of all incomes think it's okay for the baby to sleep in the bed with them when they bring them home.
It's been passed down from mom to
yeah, mom's tired. It's easier if they're breastfeeding to just keep the baby in the bed with them, and horrific accidents happen that way.
Yeah, it's a tragedy that can be avoided.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, and it's a tragedy that a family just never recovers from. They lose their infant. A parent will accidentally roll over on a child in their sleep, and the child will suffocate. The parents never recover, and it is something very simple. We're not talking solving peace in the Middle East. We're talking about putting babies in cribs. It's very concrete. Parents need this kind of information, and low-income parents really need to have a crib to put a child to bed in. If we don't even provide them with that alternative, we can't really expect a change in our outcomes. So,
one thing, you know, babies, when they're leaving the hospital, parents have access to free car seats. They can't leave the hospital unless they have a way to carry them away. Nobody provides free cribs, with the exception of the Sleep Tight program locally.
All right, so it's a very important part of the living or the environment in which a child can thrive.
Absolutely.
absolutely. It's actually the #1 cause of infant death between 1 week and 1 year old.
Wow, so that is that vulnerable age group, that
It is,
timeline right there.
and you know, it's not child abuse, it's not car accidents, it's unsafe sleeping.
Wow.
So it's a lot about the education, but it's also about providing the cribs. So at this time of year, during the holiday season, we have a special campaign that we do through the faith-based organizations called the Manger Project, where we like to pair our mission with the church's mission and talk about the true meaning of Christmas, and use that to help educate the congregations as well. Because there's a lot of grandmas and aunties out there who are taking care of babies who also need this information.
Absolutely, and that's just it, making sure everybody knows, not just the mom, but even the generations before and after.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you for sharing great information, and it's so vitally important.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Take care. And what's new at NSU? A center to help low-income families take practical steps to overcome everyday challenges. That's what. More when we come back. Norfolk State University is offering low to moderate income women access to on-campus resources, a computer lab, and free workshops on parenting, finances, and relationships, just to name a few. Deirdre Sanderlin is founding director of the Women's Economic Development Center at NSU. Delilah Collins works with our independent living program at the Norfolk Department of Human Services, and she works with foster teens and becoming able to handle life's challenges as they age out of foster care. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
The Economic Development Center for Women has been in existence since 2011, but you've been doing a number of things during those years, and one of the things I'm familiar with is the outreach aspect, your workshops, and I've been seeing a lot of that lately.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So what is it that you provide?
We provide a litany of programming for not only the community, let's not forget the young ladies on campus. So that's the unique thing about our center. We also offer opportunities, the same opportunities that we offer to the community, we offer to the young ladies on campus.
Great. Great.
So they have the same opportunities to come in and take advantage of the programming, as you earlier mentioned, about parenting, finances, technology, entrepreneurship, any of those type of activities we offer.
Okay. And Delilah, because you are working with teens in foster care that are preparing to age out, kinds of things that are being offered here can be very helpful.
Yes, I'm responsible making sure that the youth get their life skills, and the Women's Economic Center has been an excellent partnership for me with our kids. I work with them for the young ladies 18 and older. One of the things I like is on a college campus because I'm tasked with making sure they get a vocational educational training. So that means more exposure. Also, they network with other students that may be attending or other members in society that are there. So it's been an excellent opportunity for them to learn and to just develop social skills in a learning environment.
Really opens up the world to them, doesn't
Yes.
it? In a whole new way.
And hopefully they'll be future Spartans.
There you go.
Yes.
So, there's always got to be a number of reasons to
Yes.
pull people together, and some of them aren't even apparent until you are together. So sounds like a good partnership. And some of the things that you've been offering in terms of events
Yes.
certainly have covered a lot of territory. The one that you most recently had involved families, again,
did.
and different age groups that you addressed during those workshops. So you didn't have to just show up as a single one person. You could have your
Yes.
child go to.
Most definitely. The family reunion conference is what you were speaking of. We recognize the family is really, really a valuable asset, and the unit itself has diminished, and of course the family composition has changed so much. So it falls right in line with the Women's Center. Unfortunately, many of the households that we service are led by single women. Now, what we'd like to do is find opportunities to reunite the family. So that's where the ideal came from, the family reunion, to try to reconnect the family, not only the mom, but the dad, the grandparents, because we have many grandparents, as you know, that are now becoming parents all over again.
Yes, they didn't
So
expect it.
we just wanted to really try to have some open dialogue with all of the entire family about how we can become a stronger family unit.
Great. Well, that also gives people ideas, and then they can take that
Yes.
and go even further with it. For your foster kids, this provides them, like you said, exposure to people and networking opportunities that they may not have had before. But
Yes.
this offers them an example too that you can thrive.
Yes,
Yes.
because I'm always doing a workshop, but when someone from the community does it, and like for this, was fortunate enough to attend the family reunion. It was something about financial, for personal, for relationships. They even had a section on gay and lesbian parenting. So it's very informative. Even though I'm doing it for my job, I've learned a lot of information that I can carry on and help as a parent myself or as a grandparent. So this has been an ideal partnership because youth in foster care need to know how to network. They need to know how to expand their definition of what a family is, because we're really in a global society. So what I'm trying to teach them is that family has taken on a global aspect now. So this has been an ideal partnership for the independent living program.
Great, so they can look at the world quite differently and look at family quite differently, and maybe allow some people in that they wouldn't have even thought of allowing in
Yes.
before, which is an important part of that whole
Yes.
process at that age. So the Women's Economic Development Center, there is a phone number and a way to contact you to talk about perhaps maybe partnership opportunities, and anything that might be coming up in terms of events.
Yes.
And do you have anything coming up in the near future?
We do something monthly called Wednesday's Woman,
Okay.
and we actually do the same thing and talk about all of those things just on Wednesdays.
Wednesdays at?
Now, if you look at the name, I don't know whether or not anybody visits our website, but we have a capital M because that is telling the men that they are welcome to any of our programming activities, even though it's a
Okay.
women's center, and that's men in the community as well as the guys on campus. We have Wednesday's Woman, which happens every third Wednesday. It'll be on campus. Normally it's held in the police station, or it depends on how the crowd is. We'll let them know the location. In addition to that, in March, we have our Sisters in Step conference. That will be the first week of March.
Okay, and I know we'll be hearing more about that because
Yes.
you're very good about getting the word out
Thank
about
you.
these activities. All right, Wednesday, 6 p.m., NSU Police Station is where you hold every third Wednesday at Norfolk State University
Yes.
campus. So you're welcome to attend. And men can come too?
Yes, men can
There
come
you go.
too.
It's not all about women. It's about everybody.
Yes.
All right, thank you. And thank you, Delilah, for joining us.
Thank you
Appreciate
for
it.
having us.
Well, some advice on getting tax ready for the 2015 filing season, courtesy of AARP, is coming up next. The 2015 tax filing season gets underway before you know it. So before you use the holiday season as an excuse to put off getting organized, we invited Ron Jesberg and Sharon Gears with AARP's Virginia Tax Aid to get you thinking now. Certainly we do get caught up in holiday festivities. It's a very good reason to get caught up in something, but you are now getting caught up in training volunteers to provide tax filing assistance to taxpayers, starting most likely in January for the
The training?
services.
Oh, yes. The services start the end of January. The training has already started, and we have less volunteers than we normally have, so we really need volunteers this
Okay.
year. We usually have a lot more starting out in the training, and some will drift off, but
Right.
we already dropped way, way below what we need. So.
Okay, so fewer volunteers this year means they need more people to respond to help out.
Right.
So if you're interested and you like doing that kind of work, the AARP has an excellent training program, but it's getting underway right now, and that lasts for how long?
It's 5 Saturdays, normally 8 hours a Saturday, so
Okay.
it's pretty comprehensive, and
All
it's
right.
you really have to
Intensive, yeah.
commit to it.
And there are a lot of things that you have to know that you may not have known if you were preparing your own taxes, because this applies to people with varying situations, right? The services you provide.
And we did go to a lot of the homeless shelters last year.
Okay.
And people in transition homes especially.
Great.
Because, and sent flyers and had some of them brought in, which was, we hadn't really reached out to that group until last year. So
Wow, okay.
that
Good
is-
response?
Oh, yeah, because they're trying to get back on their feet, and so they're
Right.
earning money, and they have to pay taxes too, just like everybody else.
Well, great. Well, they're trying to get back on their feet. Some people just need help because they just have a hard time navigating tax law. But there are people that love to do stuff like prepare taxes, and you've done it for your family and your friends for years. You are the kind of people that really would be perfect in terms of volunteering your time to help during the tax filing season. But of course, there's training and certification, and that is because the IRS says so, and we don't argue with the IRS.
It's a
so-
mandatory thing.
yeah, and so Ron, are you doing some of the training yourself, or is this done?
We have trainers qualified to do that.
Okay.
We have 9 sites in the Tidewater area, and last year we did over 10,000 returns.
Wow.
So we help a lot of people. It's really a good service for the people of Tidewater.
And that's a free service too.
It's a free
that you're
service,
doing,
that's
right.
correct.
Right, and they do a variety of tax returns, but they do have limitations as to just how far they can go with the details. So bringing your 20 shoe boxes of receipts is probably not the best idea.
Well, that's one
but
of our That's one of our jokes, is when the little old lady comes in with a shoebox and we have to organize it for her.
Okay, so, you know, this is the time to organize the shoebox, all right? But in the meantime, it's a free service. Training is excellent. Certification by the IRS is mandatory. And so the people that are doing your taxes are very, very well prepared to do them, but they do need some help. So tax season or preparation season generally gets underway in January. I don't know if that will be delayed because we know every year there's something new that pops up.
Well, the taxes haven't been finalized yet. Congress has to pass a few things. And,
Usually in late December, is that correct?
right, yeah, they have to pass it by December, but we're finding out last minute rules right now.
Okay.
So we're starting the 26th of January through probably the 18th of April to try to help everybody out.
Is the 18th of April on a Monday, or is there a...
I'm not sure which day it
I
is,
didn't know if
but
there
we
was a
stay over a
reason.
few extra days to help out with prior years and amended returns, that people don't bring all their paperwork in.
Yes, and that is one of the other things, too, is documentation. Now, the TaxAid has a website that will be going up shortly, if it's not up already,
Right.
that you can go to, and it will give you a list of the tax sites that will be available. There's a new one, too, Sharon, that you had mentioned.
Oh, yeah, the foundation, AARP Foundation, actually is responsible for the TaxAid program. If you go to aarp.org/taxaid, it'll have all the information on there, and it'll list all the sites. You just go in there and it says, you know, find the location, and you can just find the
And
site.
Suffolk is one of the newest areas.
We have
is
a
that correct?
brand new one opening this year out in Suffolk. Ron's going to...
It's Major Hilliard Library,
Okay.
and it's just opening this year. It's starting fresh, so.
Great, great. And Ron, I take it you still manage the Virginia Beach Central Library
Library,
site, which is the largest?
Yes.
And it's the second largest in the nation.
Okay, and
Yeah.
you want to keep it that way. And people go there and they don't mind standing in line because they're told you have to expect to wait, particularly as things get later on in the season and even at the very beginning when people want to get stuff done.
February is a great time to,
Is it?
well, actually March, I guess.
Yeah,
is
March is the best.
March
March is
is
a
Best
lull
time to
period.
come
Okay.
in. Yeah, it's the slowest, so you can come
Good.
in and get
But if-
serviced right away.
If you're on our list, though, you can leave. You don't have to stay there and wait the whole time. You can leave and go have lunch or something and come back. We'll tell you
Okay.
when to come back.
Good, then I'll do just that when I come to visit you. They have a tremendous service. Take advantage of it if you can, and if you have the time to volunteer and to train, please do that because they could use your help, and so could everybody else. Thank you for giving us a little preview of what's coming up next year, and thank you for joining us, and thank you for joining us.